How can I use a bash-like shell on Windows? I use Linux and a Mac, and I'll be teaching some command line stuff soon. What can I install on Windows to give me a terminal window most similar to a basic Mac/Linux bash shell? I would like to be able to define bash_aliases as well if possible.
You could install Cygwin or mziz/ming, or you could install a full Linux distribution in a virtual machine, for example, using VirtualBox.
You can now install the Windows subsystem for Linux, which allows you to run native user mode Linux shell in tools on Windows. This allows you to run bash shell directly on Windows and is based on Ubuntu. This was introduced in Windows 10 with the Anniversary Update 2016 and is not enabled by default. To enable the new feature on a Windows 10 Anniversary Update machine, do the following. Navigate to Settings in GT, Update and AMP, Security in GT, for developers and select Developer Mode. Control Panel in GT, Programs and Features and click Turn Windows Features on or off on the top left pane. In the dialog box, check Windows Subsystem for Linux and click OK. Reboot machine. Search for Bash and click on it. It should open a command prompt and ask you if you want to install Ubuntu on Windows. Continue with Y. After installation, it will ask to create a Unix username and password. You are now ready to use the bash shell. A bit of history. Back in 2015, Project Astoria was started to bring Android apps to Windows, and they built a Linux subsystem called Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL, for the purpose. Eventually, Project Astoria was dropped as it undermined the Universal Windows Platform strategy, but some parts were retained and formed the basis of Bash for Windows. Over the course, Microsoft collaborated with Canonical, creators of Ubuntu Linux, to provide them with a native image with all supported tools/binaries. More information available here. This URL. This URL. This URL. Video.
Here is a list of the options available as of 2018-05 with plenty of updates regarding WSL as of 2022-10 along with a bit of detail regarding each one. Options that stand out. Windows Subsystem for Linux WSL. With WSL you get 99.9% of the CLI programs/utilities you'd expect to find on a Linux installation and the option to install almost everything available from the repositories, including GUI apps. Thus WSL is the best option for most cases. It is considered stable for a long time now, is very easy to install, and the only major limitations are that you can't edit WSL Linux files from Windows programs and that Microsoft is not supporting running Linux services in production environments. See, can I use WSL for production scenarios? You also need to be in the 99% of users that have a 64-bit Windows installation. Microsoft has a comprehensive FAQ if you consider using WSL. There's also a very old but nice comparison of WSL1 versus Cygwin. Note that Rich Turner is a member of the WSL team and he has posted a lot of useful info regarding it. For the curious, WSL solves the problem of running Linux software using different methods than most other options. WSL1 intercepts kernel calls and translates them to Windows kernel calls. Think the opposite of Wine. WSL2 runs a real Linux kernel in a lightweight VM that has access to the Windows file system. Cygwin and Barbon. Cygwin provides the following: a bash shell and the Minty terminal, an extensive range of common Linux utilities compiled to run on Windows, a comprehensive compatibility layer that enables Linux programs to run on Windows. Cygwin aims to make porting Linux applications on Windows easy. If some C program was designed for Unix and expects to use features such as pipes, Unix-style file and directory access etc., then you can compile it for Cygwin, and Cygwin will act as a compatibility layer between the code and the foreign OS, Windows. This allows the same C program to work on both Linux and Windows with little or no modification. A huge list of Linux programs have been thus compiled and can be run when you install Cygwin. However, you, the user of these programs, will probably have to be familiar with Unix. For example, you may need to pass arguments like /cygdrive/c/autoexec.bat instead of c:\autoexec.bat, and be ready to deal with output with Unix line termination \n instead of Windows line termination \r/n. The collection of all Cygwin programs comprise a repository, and although Cygwin doesn't have a traditional Linux package manager, you can add, remove and update programs from this repository at any time with a very counterintuitive way. You run Cygwin's setup.x at any time after the installation has completed. Barbon is Cygwin with a full-featured package manager, packed, OMIZSH for its shell, Git, automatic updates and a plugin-oriented architecture. Although the default shell is ZSH, you can easily switch to Bash. It seems like a nice upgrade from vanilla Cygwin if you don't mind the extra weight. MingW64. MingW64 provides the following: a bash shell, a fair amount of Linux utilities, a SW development toolchain to build apps that will run without a Linux compatibility layer, or with a minimal one. Ming is primarily a software distribution and a building platform for Windows. In particular, it's a Windows port of the new compiler tools, such as GCC, Make, Bash, and so on. It includes a fair amount of new tools and a minimal Unix compatibility layer. The main difference between MingW64 and Cygwin is on priorities. Cygwin aims to provide a complete POSIX compatibility layer comprising a full implementation of all major Unix system calls and libraries. Performance is secondary to compatibility. Ming aims for performance, so it will not provide certain POSIX APIs which cannot be implemented easily and or fast enough under Windows. Also, Ming's main target are SW developers. Nevertheless, casual users may also enjoy its shell, and the general purpose included utilities. Mzis 2 and Git for Windows. Mzis 2 provides the following: a bash shell and the Minty terminal, a fair amount of Linux utilities, a full-featured command line package manager to install OS programs, parts from both Cygwin and Ming to support building applications either with or without a comprehensive Linux compatibility layer, a software repository and a package manager, Pacman, which makes it easy to install, use, build and port software on Windows. Mzis 2 is also primarily a software distribution and a building platform for Windows like Ming, but it combines both the way of Cygwin and the way of Ming. You can use Mzis 2 to either create Ming programs or Mzis 2 programs. The later link to the compatibility layer of Mzis 2, mzis2.dll, which itself closely follows Cygwin's compatibility layer development with a few additions/modifications. The repositories of the two projects are completely unrelated, however. So although both MZs 2 and Cygwin provide grep.x, they may have a completely different version. Git for Windows is either just MZs 2 with Git installed or at least heavily based on MZs 2. It provides the same shell, bash, terminal, minty, and package manager, pacman. It appears to be the most popular way to get the dominant Git running on Windows, and along with it you get a nice Unix environment. Common ground. Except from WSL, most of the above tools share a lot of common technology, libraries, executables, concepts. For example, the bash shell that comes with Ming depends on mzs2.dll, which itself is a fork of cygwin.dll. So yes, there's plenty of room for confusion. Smile. More options. Kuna provides just a nice terminal and a bash-like shell for Windows. Its main component is Conmu, the terminal. On top of that it adds Clink, which provides powerful bash-style command line editing, a custom prompt layout and the Monakai color scheme. It is highly, or maybe fully, compatible with native Windows console programs. Scoop provides a command line package manager for many well-known cross-platform programs, including many new tools. It downloads pre-compiled packages. It does not provide neither a shell nor terminal, but instead runs under Windows cmd.x, with all its limitations but also with its full compatibility with native Windows console programs. It also includes no compiler suite, but of course compilers and development tools are typical packages you can install with Scoop. A lot of the programs that Scoop installs either come directly from the Ming/MZs project, or were built using their tools. Even more options. The solutions below don't seem active and I never tested them, but they seem to do the job for others. GAU, new on Windows, is the lightweight alternative to Cygwin without a shell. It uses a convenient Windows installer that installs about 130 extremely useful open-source Linux applications compiled as native Win32 binaries and available through Windows cmd.x. It is designed to be as small as possible, about 10 MB. Untutles and AMP, new Win32. Untutles is a collection of ports of common Unix-like utilities to native Win32, with executables only depending on the Microsoft, see runtime msvcrt.dll. You must download the main part and a few updates. New Win32 has later versions than Untutles, but requires supporting files, for example DLLS. MZs and AMP, Ming seem to have been obsoleted by MZs 2 and AMP, Ming W64, so I never looked at them. Some common issues on Cygwin and AMP, MZs 2. Regarding the terminal. Minty is the terminal used in Cygwin, MZs 2 and their derivatives. One should be aware that if you're running Windows native console programs, it is not a painless replacement for the Windows command prompt. While programs with simple text output usually work fine, interactive and full screen ones often have problems. Read more on Minty's home page and also read the entry "Some native console programs don't work when run from Git bash on Git for Windows FAQ." That entry has this recommendations to make when you face this kind of problems. There are several methods for working around these problems. Run programs that have problems using the Minty utility. This allows you to keep using the nicer Minty terminal, but can become unwieldy if you need the workaround for many programs. Use cmd.x, and configure it for quick edit, reasonable size and scroll back and suitable Unicode font. You'll still have to live with the other quirks of cmd.x. Install and use Conmu. Other issues. The two most important things to keep in mind are these. There's a trade-off between power and hard to debug issues. The more powerful the solution, the more stuff can go wrong, even in ways that will initially seem unrelated to your Linux layer. If you don't have plenty of Linux experience, don't use the more powerful solutions like Cygwin/Mzies2/Ming. Untutles and GNU/Win32 have the least power but also the least potential of causing you headaches. Cygwin and similar will top the bar in both power and headaches. GNU is somewhere at the middle. So when you need the most powerful solutions, take a good sleep and be fully concentrated. Avoid using powerful solutions while testing something new and possibly unstable. Also, don't forget that medium complexity solutions like GNU are not spotless. The issue of Linux commands shadowing Windows ones is a common cause of hard to debug trouble in solutions like Cygwin/Mzies2/Ming. Here's an example. I had a bat file that was using the timeout command. When run under Cygwin it would fail because timeout is also a Linux command but with different syntax. After I spotted the issue, I found out I could add a path equals at the top of the bat file to make sure the Windows command had priority. But then I got an even more cryptic input redirection is not supported error and settled for a workaround before finding the reason. Here's an example of an issue with GNU. I was running the Windows version of Unison under GNU and under some special conditions it was hanging with absolutely no error message. The same command was always running perfectly under cmd.x. The funny thing is that it was also running perfectly under Cygwin. In fact, if you have Unicode file names, a Cygwin terminal is better than cmd.x because cmd.x often displays Unicode text malformed. About this guide. During 2017-05 I got sick of not understanding the differences of the above tools, although I was using some of them since long ago, mainly Cygwin and GNU, but never for development purposes. So I spent a few hours to grok the landscape. This guide is the result of the notes I kept. I'm not an expert on the field, but I've tried hard to find all relevant information, read it with a critical eye and present the most important parts clearly. Please comment if something seems wrong and I'll do my best to correct it. Finally, an apology for some terminology issues. In this text I sometimes use the term Linux in place of Unix or POSIX. I know they are not the same, but it's very difficult to differentiate between them when approaching a topic from such a long distance. Even when it's not difficult, it takes time that I don't have smile.
There's also Clink available at GitHub. It integrates itself into Windows command prompt using hook libraries. From the project description, Clink combines the native Windows shell cmd.x with the powerful command line editing features of the new Redline library, which provides rich completion, history, and line editing capabilities. So it does not provide Bash as a programming language features or any other Unix goodies. I use Linux at work and find myself sometimes tabbing around in CMD, which does not act like I expect it from Bash. With Clink I can overcome some of these shortcomings. Lately, I also discovered a promising, but not yet can do all project called Flinux, which emulates Linux system functions and provides some kind of a system on top of it, currently based on Arch Linux.